the idea of creativity as software came to me when I was working with different fields of creations, as in architecture. I've been doing art, writing, and for many years, as long as I can remember, I've been working with the creation of different things, and it's not until lately I started to figure out that, well, it is a rational, repetitional pattern in not only my own creation, but also when I've been observing others. And I got this idea of, why isn't it possible to rationalize this in a way that makes it possible to use a computer for a lot of the idea generating, at least in the process of making, let's say, a new product, a new service, or even the ideas for some pieces of art. It could be for music and anything creative. That's the idea. And then thinking creativity as software was a bit hard to take up on. So I had to break it down into many pieces, and I tried to work with a lot of different types of process sheets, setting up the different processes I was making, and trying to figure out if that could be an answer where you basically laid out the different processes and then put them together, and with that you could have beginner's plate, to say, for creation of some software that could be assistant in the creative work. Of course, this is difficult. As a creative person, I found it very hard to use these different types of process sheets. The best I've found is something I call something that's called extreme programming. I think I really like that approach. I think they grasp something that's really essential in being creative, and what programmers do, as far as I can tell, is that they are totally in the creative process on some of their development schemes, and they manage to use this definition of extreme programming as something I would say is very close to what I believe I would like to achieve, but it's still not it. It doesn't really grasp the whole world, so to say. I mean, that's not even possible. So I have, of course, limit approach into looking into words and word couples, as I like to call it. By putting together two words is very basic. You create, as I have in some of the examples, where you have a banana dog, or you have a mango juice, or you have, as this brand, egg cube. You put together two words, and by doing so, you have the possibility to create a new idea of something that is unheard, unseen, or untouched, something that people don't really recognize or don't really know about. And I think by using words, you're not limiting anything. But of course, there are many other fields where this might apply. But my approach and thinking has been that, well, as far as I can see, AI computers, variation of them, are dealing with text very well, and they're very good with words and letters, and some of them are multilinguistic, I think it's called. And they can speak many languages, and they can translate between them, and they seem to master this very well. So using words, I think it's a very good way in if a neural network, for example, is supposed to be applied for a creative process. And of course, there are many good examples out there where you have a computer that's been studying a lot of paintings and draws up something by itself and things like that. And it's getting very inspiring. So what I'm thinking is, of course, it's possible to train somebody to repeat something else, which is very good. I don't see the creative process as that. That is mastering a skill set. And in itself, I've observed and noticed that creativity many, many times is not about mastering the skill set. It's actually the opposite. And I will have some examples. Let's say, an artist is making a painting, an artwork, or something, and is having a skill set on doing so, and is doing what that person is used to be doing when making an artwork. But there's something with this painting that the artist is never fulfilled. It doesn't give what the intention was. The intention was something more, something higher, something that is unachieved, and it leads into an emotional outbreak. Let's say for the artist, he gets angry at the painting because it is not as he would want it to be. It's basically very much less, and he destroys the painting. I don't know. Let's say he takes a hammer and he crushes it or something, and it's in pieces. Let's say it's not made of canvas, but it was on something other material he had painting on. It was pieces lying around, few shattered pieces. And then he looks at this. Now, destructional force that has been applied to what was supposed to be something that it wasn't, and he then have a new look on this thing, and maybe he then takes the pieces and puts them together again into something slightly different, but still using the elements from the old painting, and it actually becomes something more. It could also be that there's some leftover pieces that actually gives him an inspiring idea on how to make a sculpture. So he puts these pieces together, or they fall on the floor as a sculpture, and he's like so grasped by this view of this potential sculpture lying there that he just has to document how these pieces are lying on the floor and figuring out how he can make a large piece of that, and it becomes a big sculpture, and it's marvelous. It's one example. It could be other examples where other emotions or other driving forces are being applied in the creative process that is basically coming out of nowhere. It's like, let's say the artist is tired of painting and he just takes a bucket of paint and he throws on the painting and it actually works. He maybe wanted to start over, but he sees that, oh, this is actually good. I mean, yeah, we finished a little touches here, but now it's done. I mean, these unforeseen elements in the creative process that makes them so delicate in a way, because it is not something that is easy to program. I'm thinking about randomness as this element, but let's talk about that later. I'm more into this understanding of creativity as a process with a lot of skill set, of course, is needed for a repetitional process of something that already worked, but in the creation of something new, I mean, the guy that or woman that figure out how to make popcorn out of corn on a piece of fire was marvelous. We don't know really how that happened. We don't really know how other things really became as they are. But it must have been a process of probably randomness or luck, or, I mean, any other words you will apply to that for defining what that is. But it's something we cannot really easily rationalize in computer software. So having a hold on this and trying to grasp it, that how do we get all these different elements together, I started to go away from the spreadsheets and different process boards or illustration of how a process is running, and many marvelous ways of explaining that. I'm not saying it's wrong. It's probably good for what it's intended to do, but it doesn't work for me. It doesn't mean it doesn't work. Maybe somebody will figure out some of this in a way that is more as a process and describe it like that. But I haven't managed to do that. I think I've failed in doing that. So I'm trying a new approach. And it's an approach that's inspiring. I think it's an approach that is giving more of the same flexibility or more of the artist creativity as I think is important to embed. And I'm very interested in music. I've been looking into different approaches where music are at its most rational while still being as creative as it can be. And I figure out that analog synthesizers are a very good way of trying to describe what I've been wanting to express in making a process board or in making some spreadsheets on how we can put these processes together and make it work. And I started to think of this creative process as analog synthesizers connected together into a motherboard or a mixer where the music is then composed and put together based on the different signals sent by the sequencer or the timer or the other different elements that are put in place to run the whole analog synthesizer. I think it's very many interesting ways of how you can tweak the sound and make it become something interesting. Of course, this is all software today, and you can buy them. But having this analog touch, it is a bit like it gives something to the sensibility that this is something that is possible to touch upon. And by understanding the process more in that way, I think it's possible to make a model that is going to show how the creativity actually works as a process that can be computerized or made as a piece of software. This doesn't solve the whole dilemma of what output is actually good, but it makes it easier to deal with the different synthesizers. Let's call it that. We have different elements. I have different modules, synth modules of words I would like to couple in the mixer or in some other synthesizer to get a different outcome. And I don't really have the whole idea on how this is supposed to be played out or put together, but I have some basic ideas on what synthesizers I would like to have there and what they are supposed to do. And I'll begin with those who are more or less clear to me. I talked already a little bit about duality and the importance of that, and I believe one synth module would have to be a small little database that holds upon a lot of different dualities, like words and their opposites, life and death, man, woman, geometric, organic, love, hate, something that's high, tall, or something that's low or small, or large and big, and versus small and tiny, and all these different words you can have. You can have a whole bunch of these words, as many as you can gather, and you set them up in a small little synthesizer that can spit out these words. But of course, you need something to tweak on it. It's not supposed to necessarily spit out words that are in opposition to each other, but it might also have to have words that are more similar or following some of the same axes and stuff. So you need different tweaks on this little synth module to work on that. And from there you take the wire down and you put it maybe into the mixer, or you put it into another synth where it's being processed further. From there you have a whole lot of from the word you begin with, what the word is being given from this first synth. You might even have an input word that's coming from a sequencer or a timer, which if you have certain words you are very interested in and you might want to have in use. But you need one module which is very good, and this is something like, let's say, Google Translate is magnificent at. It's basically a dictionary I'm talking about here. A plain synthesizer as a dictionary where you have variations of the same words, synonyms and meanings, and other words that could mean similar things. And then you need some stepping on this little synthesizer on how far away are you willing to go from the original word in its meaning. and things like that. So you can work with that, and already there we have like two quite simple synthesizers that are generating some words of some kind, which has to be coupled, perhaps. You can run these processes several times, that you can create words that are, if you have more of these synth modules, you can get words that are very far away from the original words, but that's maybe not where you want to go to create randomness. I think random is something that is random. I think using, let's say you have some big data access, and you can use search words, or you can use something that is popular, or you can use verbs, especially, or nouns to have as a random element to be put into the whole matrix that is then being created in this synth module, with different words and potential word couples that comes out to the mixer, where you have different words you can put together and see how they work, and that's the human job to see if this actually gives something or doesn't give something, where you can have a little sampler where you put aside some words to have this feeling that, okay, this is might be a good idea. We put this in the sampler and we keep it there. We store it there for a while and we just taste on it. We feel how it sounds. We feel how this word is, and we use that. So you have this sampler connected there, so you can go back to that setting if you would like to once in a while and see if that one was good. Or you have, let's say you have 16 tracks in the sampler and you have potential different words that are good or better. You could even have a bigger storage memory if you would like that on this module here. But the random synth module is an interesting one, because it can actually be anything. But I think using big data is a benefit for those who have access to that. But seriously, it could be something anybody could build from anything. Doesn't have to be trends or anything like that. It could be something specific in some interest field, limit to that, or just try to make it as random as possible. Just listing a whole dictionary up and just see what it picks from some random number generator, and then use that. Are you then supposed to sort it, or are you then supposed to do anything about it? I think it's more like you have a noise into the sampler. You have these noise boxes, and I think they're very cool. They tweak the sound in a very interesting way, and you could do some of the same here with the word couples you want to create. So you try to run this synth operation here for a while, and you see how that goes, and you see where you go with that, and you get some words into your sampler and you try to taste on them. But I think you have to do this process many times and in iteration, that if you get a word couple that actually sounds good, you still want to redo it from that outcome and see where you go next, because it's not necessarily far, or it could be very far from where you actually want to be and where you feel yourself comfortable as a human to the new idea you're trying to use the computer to generate for you. But I mean, after all, you're the DJ in all this aspect, or the composer, if you like, how this machine is supposed to work. So it's not like there's not a human aspect, but it's a tool for creating ideas more rapidly and more accurate, to say, according to certain wish set. But then with the random generator and the different words that have different meanings and synonyms that might be maybe quite different depending on how you look at them, actually, from the original word, you have some sample boxes there already which are creating something that can be really far off, and it could actually create something that is essentially interesting.